Hi, Jamie Cowen here to talk about the disaster in Israel. Quoting from the prophet Jeremiah, "Oh, that my head were a spring of water and my eyes a fountain of tears." And then again from Jeremiah following the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile of the Jewish people. "I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. So I say, my splendor is gone and all that I had hoped from the Lord. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me." These describe the general feeling in Israel today. From the joys and celebrations of the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles and Simchat Torah, joy of the Torah, to unspeakable tragedy on the very same day, who can imagine? Israel is in a state of shock. Everyone is affected. Everyone mourns. The images of the slaughter of innocent lives, many teenagers, are too horrible to view. The roads are empty. Most stores are closed. Grocery stores, the only stores open, are packed with families glued to their phones to see the latest news. How could this be? How could this happen to a country that was formed to provide safety to the Jewish people? Last winter, I published a blog titled "Israel is in Trouble." The gist of the blog was that the then recent election of a radical government in Israel was introducing proposals that would undermine the country's democratic character, leading to economic collapse and violence. In August, I produced another vlog titled, "Will This Be Another Cha B'Av Event in Israel?" In this vlog, I quoted extensively from the prophet Zechariah, who declared that injustice in the land had led to the destruction of the first Commonwealth of Israel and the first temple. Coincidentally, Israel's current government enacted the first leg of the so-called judicial reform, leading to undermining the judiciary and its ability to protect individual rights on the eve of Cha B'Av. Now we have a disaster on our hands. Years ago, I was invited to a conference on the site of the famous 1973 Yom Kippur tank battle on the Golan Heights. The speaker that day was General Kolahani, one of the 10 commanders that miraculously beat back the overwhelming force of the invading Syrian army and turned the tide of the war. When talking about the Yom Kippur War, he said he believed the war occurred because the country had become smug and overly confident in its own abilities. And now, exactly 50 years later, we have a similar disaster. A government that put in power a former terrorist and other extremist, pushed through unjust changes to the country's structure and character against the pleas of the country's citizens, intentionally divided the country when unity was needed, and then paraded around the world as a peacemaker to the Arab world while expanding more settlements into Palestinian territory, thereby inflaming this marginalized community. Something was bound to give, and it did. This time, Israel was unprepared, apparently lulled into complacency by its own prior successes and its superior technology. Of course, this is not to excuse the murderous Hamas regime in Gaza. Hamas's day will come, likely rather soon, but tragically, many innocents on both sides of the conflict will perish. What precipitated this invasion? It's unclear. Possibly Hamas was trying to undermine the budding peace process between Israel and Saudi Arabia because it saw that Gaza and Palestinians in the West Bank were increasingly becoming an afterthought. As they see it, the more Israel is accepted by the Arab world, the less chance of any real change for Palestinians. The problem with their reasoning is that the wholesale slaughter of hundreds of civilians hardens the world's sympathy to their plight and assuredly sidelines any Israeli interest in peace with them for the foreseeable future. What comes next? A probable ground invasion into Gaza by Israeli forces to topple Hamas. Tens of thousands of Israeli reservists have been called up for this likely protracted affair. This will be a bloody battle involving intense urban warfare. Israel's only viable solution at this point is to reoccupy Gaza, a very dangerous and undesirable option. The elephant in the room question is Hezbollah in the north. Even more than Hamas, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy and far more equipped with hundreds of thousands of rockets, many of which can reach to the farthest extent of Israel. If they attack, Israel will be involved in a two-front war with the potential of many casualties. This is a very dangerous time for the country, comparable to the risks of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. More than ever, Israel needs the Lord as a protector. As the prophet Zechariah declared from the Lord, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Assuming the Lord himself doesn't return, what are the needed outcomes? Number one, for Israel to prevail and Hamas to be toppled. Number two, for Hezbollah in the north to be restrained. Number three, following the war, for the government to resign and call for new elections. Number four, for a commission to form to investigate the colossal failures of intelligence and military preparedness. Number five, for a unity government to form, absent the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is most responsible for allowing this disaster to occur on his watch. As former U.S. President Harry Truman pointedly declared many years ago, the buck stops here. How should we respond? Psalm 127 says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. I believe the Lord called into being the modern nation of Israel, but things have gone awry. There needs to be an awakening, and here are some prayer points. Number one, pray for wisdom for the political and military leaders as they prosecute the war. Number two, pray for a temporary unity government to be formed that includes leaders of other parties in order to bring unity to the country and to sideline the radicals in the current government. Number three, pray for the successful rescue of the potentially hundreds of hostages held by Hamas. Number four, pray for comfort for the hundreds of families who have lost loved ones and healing of the trauma this unprecedented invasion has brought on the whole nation. Number five, pray for a quick and decisive win over Hamas and for its leaders to be brought to justice. Number six, pray for Hezbollah to be restrained and to not enter the fray. Number seven, pray for an international reckoning for Iran, which helped to finance and strategize the Hamas attack. Number eight, pray for the salvation of Israel. For those in the United States and elsewhere who want to assist, most regular synagogues and Messianic congregations and organizations have ways to donate to Israel. Please consider helping at this time of need. Also, as an aside, please don't forget to order my new book, How Politics Has Distorted the Gospel, available now on Amazon. Finally, quoting from Psalm 122, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. For the sake of my family and friends, I will say, peace be within you. See you next time.